Now, the best way to introduce my topic is to make a point about information in a socialist society. This is a sophisticated audience. You know about distortion and suppression and elimination of the facts. We live in a socialist society, and suppression of information is typical of such societies. To eliminate freedom, one must first eliminate widespread knowledge of the truth. So I submit to you that today in the United States there are 3 levels of information. The first level we could call the establishment version. It's what most people have believed in the past to be true about events and history. The difference today compared with, say, a decade ago is that the credibility of the establishment has been shattered. People in general no longer believe in Washington or anything that comes out of Washington. So this first level is what the government or the establishment wants you to know. Only coincidentally is it the truth. The criteria they use are 2, I suggest. One, they say, what do we want them to know? And secondly, they say, is it consistent with what we told them last time? And sometimes they slip up and then the statements become inoperable. Then we have the second level of information, sometimes called the revisionist level. It challenges the first level, but it's still based on documents and information released by the bureaucrats and politicians in Washington. It does not get to the root of the problem. It doesn't get to the root of the problem because it relies mainly on facts which they decide can be released. I would suggest, and I hope you won't take this unduly critically, that the critics of the Kennedy assassination probably fall within this category. There's no question they're onto something. But they're still at the second level because they rely on information which it has been decided can be released. They will not get to the third level until they get all the information within government files, and that, I understand, may take 75 or 100 years. Then we get to the third level, and I suggest that presumably almost everybody, or everybody in this room, is operating or wants to operate on the third level. It is based on new documentary evidence that has to be rooted out. From the research viewpoint, you have to know where to look, you have to know about its existence, you have to demand it, you have to get it declassified. You must accept, when you're in my position, that when you initially publish it, most people will not believe you. They will not believe you because the establishment version got in there first, and the mess of the media, and I'm not blaming the media for this, got behind it and publicized what they believe to be the truth. But we're now getting a number of very solid, substantial books written on this third level. I'll give you some quick examples. Colin Simpson, The Lusitania, an attempt to bring the United States into World War I, documented. Julius Epstein, Operation Keelhaul. A very new book by Guy Richards, The Rescue of the Romanovs. The Tsar was not murdered, as the establishment would like you to believe.
Signed to the Office of Naval Intelligence, and then ultimately to the briefing team of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet. And so that's how I got assigned. And while I was there, I saw, ladies and gentlemen, and learned very quickly that the American people are very seldom, if ever, told the truth about literally anything. For instance, while President Nixon, and folks, don't blame it all on President Nixon, they all do it. This is the established policy of the national security apparatus. You don't tell anybody anything they don't have a need to know. And you never tell the American people the truth about what's happening, ever. It's just that simple. They don't have a need to know. Well, President Nixon was telling the nation on television that we were not bombing North Vietnam, that we had no troops in Cambodia or Laos, that we had not put any of our people in Cambodia or Laos, that we were not bombing or strafing or doing any air missions in Cambodia or Laos. I was sitting there with a group of high-ranking naval officers waiting for the latest bombing results of North Vietnam, and the latest situation reports of our combat missions in Cambodia and Laos. So I knew early on that the American people were being lied to, and they're being lied to about everything, folks. The Vietnam War had nothing to do with communism, had nothing to do with any of the politics in Southeast Asia, as the American people have been told. It had absolutely everything to do with the drugs in what's known as the Golden Triangle and with the oil in the Gulf of Tonkin and the South China Sea. The number one mission of the United States Navy in the Gulf of Tonkin was not to support the troops engaged in battle on the ground in South Vietnam, but was to protect the oil exploration ships which were locating the places that were scheduled to begin drilling for oil when we won the war. Well, it turned out that we didn't win the war. At the same time, the Central Intelligence Agency was taking over from the French the manufacture, and the exportation of drugs from Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and the what's known as the Golden Triangle, in order to use those drugs to bring in tons and tons of money for their black projects that they cannot get money for from Congress, and for the ultimate use in destroying all existing sovereign nation states and bringing about a one-world totalitarian socialist government.